was born in St. Louis, Missouri, in the suburbs, in an area called Florissant. I struggled in school as a kid in the sense that I had to work really hard to get the grades that I did. Actually, when I was in the public school for a little bit, I was put in a special reading group, which automatically gave you a D in the grade, and I was pulled from class to get help with reading. My parents ultimately pulled me out of that because they didn't want me being labeled. I was a shy and quiet kid. When I got to high school, I was tired of being shy and timid and kind of made fun of as a nerd, and so I decided to try to be much more outgoing in high school. As early as 4th grade, I loved playing school. At the end of the school year, oftentimes teachers were giving out old textbooks, and I always couldn't wait to grab one of those to bring it home to pretend and do school. There was a teacher's store down the street from my house, and I would save up my money to buy bulletin board decorations and teacher lesson plans. And I set up the basement. I had a corner of the basement where I had a whole bulletin board and chalkboard and everything else. And so as early as 4th grade, I started playing school.
When did I meet Tiffany? I met my future wife in March of 2000 in St. Louis at a coffee shop.
Did she ever talk about wanting to be a teacher?
When I met her, she was a student teacher, so yes, that was her chosen career field.
I did my student teaching in St. Louis. Then I went to graduate school and did a lot of student teaching with my graduate school classes. Being a military spouse, we moved a lot. So when my husband and I first got married, we had orders to Japan. I did not intend to be a kindergarten teacher. I actually gravitated more towards 2nd and 3rd grade, but the only position open was kindergarten. And so I took it, and I actually really fell in love with the grade. And I taught in Japan for 2.5 years. When we moved back to the States, I got a job teaching in the Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and I taught kindergarten for a half a year there because we were only in the area for 9 months. Then we moved here to Maryland, and I taught for a year at George Washington Carver Elementary School, again teaching kindergarten. We moved, and I had Myra. I took about 6 years off.
So the discovery of Montessori was a matter of happenstance because our daughter, we enrolled her in the preschool that just so happened to be in the neighborhood. It wasn't that we were seeking it out, we just happened to, it was convenient because it was across the park. And we put her in it, and it was a Montessori preschool.
We moved to California, the state, then we moved back to Maryland. And as Myra was getting ready to begin kindergarten and the boys were turning 2.5, 3 years old, that's when I went back to work and began to pursue a Montessori teaching credential. The training for a Montessori teaching credential is vastly different than getting a teaching certificate at a major college or university. When I started back in 2013, 2014, the people that had Montessori training programs were actually people that filtered down that had been trained by Maria Montessori herself. Maria Montessori did not want her method becoming watered down. So she trained all of her first students. And then her students, she then selected some to be able to train the next generation. And so we're actually a very small group. When you do Montessori training, you create these huge albums, which are your lesson plans for all 3 years of the students that you have. And sometimes your lesson plans are written, many times they give you the outline of the lesson, but you're writing the lesson plans. You're creating a lot of your own lesson plans. Your albums have illustrations or photographs so that you can quickly see the way your lesson is supposed to look when you're first teaching and you need to refer to your albums a lot. My first job as a Montessori teacher. So let's go back to how I discovered Montessori. I did not know much about Montessori until Myra went into preschool and we put her in a Montessori preschool program. I didn't know anything about it. It was convenient. But the things that I was seeing her being independent and helpful and driven to learn and self-motivated, I wondered what was Montessori doing and wanted to pursue a Montessori training to figure out what was happening. And so I went to a local Montessori school here and said, hey, I am doing my early childhood Montessori training. Would you host me to be able to do my student teaching in a year? And they said, yes, absolutely. But as I was finishing that training program, they said, oh, we've changed our minds, but we really need a lower elementary teacher. So we'd like to send you to training and you become a lower elementary teacher. So I did do that. I completed my lower elementary training and I worked with a co-teacher. So I learned a lot from it and brought me to where I am today. In my journey of becoming a Montessori teacher, again, I said there's not a lot of us, and the only times that a lot of us Montessorians get to come together and see one another is at the big Montessori conferences. I am affiliated with the American Montessori Society. I am a credentialed teacher through the American Montessori Society, and every year I attend the annual conference. And so I've met a lot of colleagues and peers and other Montessorians at this event. And one of my good friends that I have met there, Raifa Jabechi, she also runs the training program of MITE, the Montessori Institute of Teacher Education. Well, she is Turkish. And one year I got talking to her at the conference and she invited me to come and teach in Istanbul for the summer at their summer camp. But at the same time, she invited my 3 children. She wanted to have an English-speaking teacher and English-speaking children. And my children at that age were just beginning to phase out of the early childhood classroom, but they were Montessori kids themselves. And they were familiar with the classroom and they were familiar with me being their mother, but also being a Montessori teacher. And so the 4 of us journeyed to Istanbul and spent the summer teaching in a Montessori school at Pembe Kule Montessori, or the Pink Tower Montessori School in Istanbul, Turkey. My American dream is to be of service to the children who will someday be the future. They are going to carry on the role of caring for our planet. They're going to carry on the role of helping humanity to flourish. And so my American dream is if I can play a small part in helping young people reach their fullest potential, helping young people to feel confident and be problem solvers and be self-motivated to be something. My American dream is to help people each reach their own potential and be of service to the youth of the future. There aren't a lot of Montessori schools in the world, and there's even fewer here in Southern Maryland. And so it wasn't that I wanted to open my own school, it was more like a calling, like there is a need in our area, and I know that I can fulfill that need. And I thought that I need to do this. There are so many families and children that I could service, and there not being a lot of choice, and the choices were limited in terms of what the other programs in the area are offered, that I thought I could offer a little bit of a different niche within the Montessori area.
Surprised me when she took me on the tour of her room. I didn't realize the kids did all that, like pouring their own glasses of water with these old pitchers and going up and washing their hands, and they had their own towels. And she said they know how to do geometry, and she's telling me all about the things as it went up in their years, you know, and that shook me. That really surprised me.
So when we moved from California to Maryland, after our daughter had been in the Montessori preschool for, I guess it was maybe a year and a half, we moved to the East Coast, and we wanted to continue putting her in a preschool. My Tiffanie she said that she wanted to put Myra back into a Montessori preschool, and I was like, it's too expensive, I don't understand what the difference is. Why can't we just pick a regular preschool, daycare basically? And so we ended up putting Myra into a regular preschool daycare program, and then immediately we noticed that Myra's behavior had changed. She had typically been, very happy, singing and dancing and coloring and drawing and doing all sorts of fun activities, and we noticed her losing all of those things when she was enrolled in this program. She stopped wanting to do those things. She just kind of wanted to sit and watch TV, and so we went and talked to the teachers and found out that the children weren't going outside to play on the playground, typically because, Susie or Johnny had left their coat or whatever reason, or it was too wet. Some excuse was always given. And then we were also found out that there were very specific activities that the children were able to do. They weren't able to, kind of have free play. And then also at the very end of every day, right before noon, for about the last 30 minutes, they were watching TV instead of reading books or other things. So we found that the program was very inflexible. And so we pulled Myra out of it, and we put her back into a Montessori preschool or Montessori program, and she came back to her old self. She was singing and dancing and happy, and it was at that point that I realized that there was something different about Montessori.